Hello everyone, and welcome to the Church of Pentan. May the cores be our saviors. I'm Espira, your head of ceremony, and as usual, I'm joined by my apostles, Cosmic and John. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Can't complain. Good weekend. Now we're here.
Yeah, your weekend a little bit better than mine, but yeah, good weekend all around.
I mean, no surprise here. We did just have Grand Open Monroeville, and I think both of you guys did incredibly well. Cause you're usually the one to kind of be down on yourself, but look, you didn't play Axe, and you actually did better than ever. And I mean, John, our hero, breaking into the top 8 and fighting it through till top 4. Absolutely amazing performance, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Even Pikachu is right here holding his trusty sign with Rex and a t-shirt that is now saying we are no longer topless. So there you go.
We're definitely going to jump into that as well as kind of opens up the conversation of who is the current best player in the game, best players. I know there's been a conversation now, especially now that, spoiler alert, Caleb actually ended up taking down this event, which gives him his 3rd finals appearance in 3 back-to-back tournaments, as well as winning 2 of them. So that's definitely going to be a topic. Then we're going to talk about Bandai Fest, Worlds. All those have been officially announced. The LA Convention Center did have a little bit of a posting a couple of weeks ago, which kind of gives us a hint of where everything was going to happen. But we do have some more surrounding information about that. Then we've got Guess Our Flavor Text, supposedly everyone's favorite segment of the show. And then we'll wrap up by upcoming. We didn't get any reveals, but we do have some hopes and dreams about what Set 3 will be going. We're fairly certain by the next time that the show comes around, we will have reveals to talk about, so we'll go from there. But to kick us off, Cosmic, top 16 finish with your Green Swift list. I guess first off, why that list? Why jump into that with this tournament?
Yeah, so for those that have been following the channel for a while, or just what I've been posting out on Twitter and whatnot, like I just absolutely love the Armor Tree list that I was playing for like the longest time. And other than making lists for content reasons or just like testing and helping out the locals, like it was the only deck that I really enjoyed playing. So I was just like, screw it. I'm going to go in this event. I'm going to play a thing that, 1, I have probably the most reps with at this point, and 2, that is the most fun in my opinion. And it really has been kind of more of a group thing project going back to Tulsa, a very similar list made top 32. John actually had some feedback on it. He did an updated list, and then I expanded on that further. So it's one of those things that just has been an evolution of ideas kind of going throughout the entire community. And then, by the end of it, came to the sad realization that, well, Armor Tree is probably just not good enough until we get a few more, carapites or insectoids that really bring it together, where Scoops often enough is going to be all you need from a good Swift value, and then Shrike being absolutely insane, as it turns out, with Worker Ant-Man, when you have those big tempo plays you can pull off with like Thorn Prison and Dream Bombs just to set back your opponent. So it was just a lot of fun. I would play it again. I maybe don't want to see 4 Axe Spiders in 7 rounds again, but I went 3-1, so it did okay, I guess. I'm not going to call it like an Axe Spider counter by any means, but it did perform better than I expected, so I'll take it. Yeah, top 16 at the end of it.
Yeah, actually, John, you were on the deck for a while and had considered playing it before you and the rest of your team kind of pivoted to Terry's. Why'd you get off the list?
There's no real reason. We felt like it was pretty good into pretty much everything. The Axe Spider matchup was pretty okay, but still not, like, hey, I'm going to beat Axe Spider every time. Of course, there's nothing that really does that. But I think at the end of the day, it was just something, Ryan Valentino, he's just like a Terrasaur lifer. And time again, he'd just pound his head into all these decks. And, seeing his results against everything kind of was like, okay, well, maybe we should just be playing Terrasaur, since it's just more consistent than any green deck at the moment. So that's probably why we really came off of it at the end. But it's a very good deck, obviously. Cos did really well with it. So kind of have to watch it moving forward. I think it gains actually quite a bit from the lore set with the new Tokiwa. I think it's really good in that version that he played. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that like people are still adjusting to the notion that you can play a body on their turn. I think that's like it's one of the few like skill checks you can actually do in this game at the moment, and like I think Shrike is like very much kind of surprising me in how much tempo it can actually gain you. even the limited testing. I would have probably played this deck personally if I had jumped into it, just because like I like playing decks that aren't like super known numbers to people, and hopefully that notion can get me there. Even though like Lord knows X Spider carried me last tournament, so there's that. But then I guess you're saying you had 4 X Spider matchups, and then like what, a Terry and something else cause?
Yeah, so the round 1 feature match was against the Nemesis Nova style of deck, which was just like a really cool, meant
saucy.
to be like red purple value deck, which was super cool. Like that you got the turn with like the Nemesis into the Star Altar to get the Soul Core to the Meteor. I'm like, yeah, dude, you get to do all this. Like that's super sick.
Wait, he had Nemesis and Nova in his deck?
Yeah.
I didn't see
Yes. So, well, actually, his list didn't have Nova. It just had Meteor.
Oh, it was
so
just Meteor? Okay.
It didn't even have Nova. So it was just like you're playing Nemesis into Star Altar into
so he's
like
doing Soul Core stuff with.
Bro, yeah, he's got some kind of Soul Core pile thing going on.
Yeah,
it was saucy as heck.
Yeah, sounds cool. I'll have to watch the feature.
It was definitely super sick to see it. Like obviously we didn't get to see a lot of it because game 1 I just was able to aggro them out, and then game 2 we played the resource game and I hit depths, he didn't, sort of thing. So I just taxed out his hand because that's what green can do very, very fast between Thorpe and Prison and things of that nature. He just didn't have a lot of room to really go anywhere in the second game, but we did get to see some of the Star Altar plays with Nemesis and things of that nature. But the 2 losses ended up being to Axe Spider being one of them. Again, went 3-1. That's just how it is. The other loss was to green aggro because they double mush tarantulaed me game 1 and I just didn't have enough information. Unfortunately, I discarded wrong and I lost because of it. And then game 2, I just straight up bricked. I had a questionable, keep, but I wanted to draw the extra card knowing that they're on Mush Tarantula and I had a Star Blessed draw in hand. And then I hit like double Crag, double Elephant, double Derm Dyna against an aggro deck. And I'm like, all right, those are just the bricks sometimes, I guess is what it is. So it was a lot of fun to play it out. And then the other matchup was, let me pull up my notes really quick. Oh, a green Rampless was the other that was in round 5. Then we got to see someone who was on the similar list. He was actually playing against, I forget who, one of my friends that I was at when I was going around the table to see when everyone was playing. And it was just a very, hey, I'm going to play Work Grandman. I'm going to play all the butterflies. I think they were playing Manticore as well. Like literally just 12 ramp bodies. And then they had Enterprise. They had full curse combo in there. Like just all of like the greedy boss, like green ramp into boss monsters, which was really cool. But my style of deck preyed on that very, very well because I am going to be making these, as long as we're keeping even with the ramp, I'm just going to dream bomb you, swift in some guys, and then get in the extra damage. I'm going to punish you for trying to make these extra plays. Sure, you have the cores, but it's going to set you back much bigger in every single turn that you try to develop something. And then I just kept 2 cores and everything, so he could never curse dragon me either. And again, Swift is just really good in that matchup because decks like that want to play in the main phase at the end of the day, or like a lot of red decks too for the on play or purple on play stuff, right? So when you have Swift and you're able to play during combat instead of during main phase, turns out you get to dodge a lot of removal or dodge a lot of effects that your opponent wants to be playing. So Scoops was definitely sick all weekend long. Really, I knew how much I loved that card. It was kind of the other reason I really wanted to play the deck, and it just really overperformed basically all weekend long. It was MVP all day.
Yeah, something with your green deck too is that I don't think people realize how hard it is to like remove Worker Ant-Man one season play, because between gaining the core, then using that core to Thorn Prison, or using the core to play Shrike after they block, so on and so forth, it is like super hard to get that man off the field.
Yeah, the Shrike plays was insane all weekend long.
Yeah, I think it's the more and more I play with Worker Ant-Man, and we kind of saw that with Zach and Matas's purple list, that like if you leave it unchecked, it's like absolutely insane because you can use the extra cores like you were saying. And the green deck just gets to do that the best because you get the reductions. So to that front, it's like super, super strong. And then I think the biggest like technology that John introduced into the deck when he gave us the initial build was just throwing Beltagore in there. And like, was Beltagore as good as we assumed it would be, or?
Yes and no. So no, because I played against so many bloody Axe Spiders. But yes, because it did act as a good multi-attack target. So a lot of times, right, when you're playing all these Swift bodies, they're all 4 or 5 costs. So there would be turns where it's like you Swift in, Scoop Owl, you get a block, it taps something down, and you bring back a Beltagore, which is either then going to kill something or just be another blocker. So you shut down basically 3 things off one single card. And that is a huge punish for opponents who are trying to get in like after you play Thorn Prison, right? They're already taxing their board so much. So I think going forward, and I think in the video I did just 2 I think I did 3 Beltagore, but I'm actually probably going to cut it back to 2. I think when we try to fit in the new Tokiwa, because you still want some number, but depending on how the meta lines up, you really only want 1 or 2 of them, and you're probably going to discard it anyways to like a Volcanic Canyon or something, and just have it as a threat more so than playing it in kind of the main phase step.
Yeah, Beltagore was really kind of, I know this kind of sounds backwards, but Beltagore was actually kind of tech for the Axe Spider matchup, because there's a lot of situations where you win the game by just making many multi-attackers. So, you'd play like a Scoop Owl or your 4-drop Heaven Butterfly and just attack with it, right? So they either take a damage or they block it and you get back like 3 Beltagores. So, that was how we were beating Axe Spider in testing, because they either have to take damage every turn and die, obviously, or, they have to have a suppression every turn, basically, once you get 2 or 3 Beltagores in the discard pile. So, that's kind of why we were playing 4. But I do agree with Koz that once Axe Spider, if it leaves the meta, then I think you're probably fine with like 3, maybe even 2 Beltagore. It just depends on how popular red is at that point. But, that's really why it was in there as a 4 of.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like the same logic of like Sortosaurus, right? Where like you're just kind of forcing them to have the suppression every turn.
Yeah.
Okay, well, very fair. Well, once again, congratulations on your top 16 finish. So, Tulsa was what? Like you finished 25th or whatever?
Top 32.
Top 32. This tournament you finished 10. So like top 8 finish Netherlands, right? Like we're on our way up.
Yeah, hopefully we can continue the streak of doing better every tournament.
Yeah, and then on the other token, we've got John breaking into that top 8, top 4 placement with Terrasaur featuring Joker.
Yeah.
Why?
That, again, that was a Valentino edition. We tested Terry's against Axe Spider over and over and over again. We just grabbed Caleb's list from Tulsa and just jammed it against Axe Spider, or, against Terry's over and over and over again. And he just kept getting pounded and pounded and pounded. So finally he's like, let's just try these Jokers and see what happens. So we put Joker in, and then all of a sudden we were winning, maybe 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10. It's like, so we kind of saw that it was winnable. So we figured that we could beat the less experienced Axe Spider players pretty much every time with Joker. And the more experienced ones, like Caleb, for example, we had a chance to win, but it would be more difficult, obviously, once they knew that we had Jokers. And that's really what happened to Alex. He played against Caleb. Caleb knew he had Jokers, so it was harder to win. Whereas my other Axe Spider matchups, I played it 4 times total. My other Axe Spider matchups were much easier because they had no idea what was coming. So I'd get them to, 2, and they'd be like, okay, they'd wall up and think they're safe. And then you're like, oh, well, here's all these Jokers. So, it was really good tech for this event. I thought our deck was like 4 cards off from being probably the perfect deck. Sortosaurus was terrible all day. And, I know I saw Twitch chat, like I rewatched my game and I saw Twitch chat and someone was like, oh, Tatta's playing Sortosaurus. He was like the number 1 hater. It's like, yeah, I'm back to number 1 hater because that card was dog water all day. I would have rather been like Dragon Trooper or like the 4th Eagle or just any other creature that didn't cost 4 mana. So, I had a pretty good run though. I played against, it's kind of funny. I usually like to play decks where I won't play mirror matches because I hate mirror matches. And round 1, I played a Terry mirror. So I lost game 1, round 1. And then from that point on, I didn't lose another game till like round 6. So it was just, I think it was the right deck for the event. I played against 2 Terrys, 1 yellow, 2 Axe Spider, and Swiss, and then 1 purple. And then in top 8, I played against Ryan, mirror match, and then, of course, Frisco. So, went 2-2 overall against Axe Spider, lost to Ryan Miles, lost to Frisco, beat 2 other players. So, I thought the deck was great. We have some changes. I think Alex is going to play it this weekend in Glasgow. So we'll see how he does there with the changes.
I also noticed that you guys actually, so in the changes to fit in Joker, you guys actually, I think, like cut an Eagle, you guys cut a Gagano, and those are surprising cuts to me, especially since for a lot of players, it's like, oh, it's Gagano the deck, but I think the reality is just like you guys are a really good tempo deck and that can take advantage of like early advantage turns, and then it just, hey.
The whole Rex thing is like, someone else asked me about this too. It's like, why were you playing 3 Rexes? It's like, well, Rex isn't really that good in a Terrasaur meta or in a Axe Spider meta, right? Because he doesn't really do anything, against Axe Spider. So when you're playing 4 Jokers, 2 Flamefish, 4 Richards, like, that's already 10 spirits out of your 26 that aren't Terrasaurs or Emperor Beasts. So you kind of have to make sacrifices somewhere, and I thought that was kind of the obvious one. I even thought about going down to 2, but I felt like it's so important in like the purple matchups that you really can't go down to 2. But I was perfectly happy with 3. I never really wanted the 4th one. Well, I played some mirror matches and I wanted it, but outside of that, I was never like, oh, really, I really need Rex here. There was one time against Frisco in the top 4. I think it was game 3 where he led the Elephant Nexus and then played an Aegis on turn 2, sacrificed his 0 drop to put 4 counters on Aegis. And if I would have drawn Rex right there, I would have won that game on the spot. So that was the only time where I was like, man, I really want 4 Rex against Axe Spider because the game would have been over. So outside of that, the 4th Eagle should be there. Flamefish was not it for the weekend. Other than that, deck was perfect.
Yeah. What? So, Dragon Arc.
Yeah, that that was kind of accidental. It was so all the guys stayed at my house. I live like an hour south, so they all stayed here. And on Friday, we were just trying to figure out the sideboard, and we played some games, in the afternoon. And Ryan and Alex wanted to test against white aggro. And after 2 or 3 games, like, man, what can we do to make this matchup better? And I forget who said it. I don't think it was me. Maybe it was. I don't know. But we're like, well, let's try Halberd, right, and see how it works out. So he was tremendous. He absolutely destroys white aggro. He's incredible against green aggro. And we didn't know at the time, but I found out like round 4 when I played Jesse Smith, he's actually quite good against purple too. So, shuts off Camelot Knight, a lot of their curse stuff. So the Maduka is a lot worse. I even boarded in the mirror match, against Ryan and my round 1 opponent because it's good in the mirror too. It was just a really good card, and I kind of wish I'd have played it, in previous versions of Terry's, last month or whatever. But the card overperformed all day.
Yeah.
What a world we're living in where we're coming back to that card after, thinking back to early Nova lists and just how much the meta has shifted, where I was like, oh my God, this is the worst card out of red, to now where we are in present day. It's like probably has a very reasonable spot in some red lists going forward, just with the way the meta has shaped up.
Yeah, the way the meta is, like all these white decks are like, okay, let's just play 21 drops that don't cost anything. So then you're just like, all right, well, here, I'll play this Halberd. And now it's like, okay, you literally have to Dream Bomb it or, bounce it somehow, or you cannot play the game.
Yep. Always go back and look at those set 1 cards again. You might find another good surprise along the way.
Yeah. I think it's the fact. I think that's also valuable in the fact that like it helps with the white aggro matchup a lot. It essentially kind of shuts down the entire matchup, and then it has usages elsewhere that helps quite a bit. And for what it's worth, I think there's still value in Flamefish. It's one of those things where like sometimes Flamefish super sucks, but if you played against the white aggro matchup, you're probably happy that you saw him or like something like that, right? So I think it's just more so like to hedge your bets. Maybe there's a world in which you just start siding them instead, but the sideboard is like so tight right now because like there's so many matchups where you're just like, let's say you're playing Axe, it's like, okay, I want to bring in like these 6 cards or whatever.
Yeah, so, it's just because it's an Axe Spider meta, right? If it was any other meta where, half the field wasn't one deck that Flamefish is terrible against, it would have been a lot better. It's just, the Axe Spider decks kind of warp the meta so much that your card choices and decks kind of get really wild and out of left field. Like you find yourself playing these cards that make no sense and are not good at all usually, then all of a sudden they're all stars. So It's kind of how it works out.
So breaking into Top Cut, how's it feel? How's it feel to make it
no,
into day 2 and have to play it out?
It's nice. I've always been the type of player who makes Top Cut. So to finally break in for this game, it's pretty nice. I've had a pretty good run since the Pro Tour. I got 12th in the Pro Tour. Tulsa, I didn't play poorly at Tulsa. It's just my deck choice probably wasn't the right one. And then, of course, Pittsburgh did pretty well. So hopefully we can keep this going for the second Pro Tour here in October. That's the next event I'll be at. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Previous games, every time I top, I kind of go on a streak. It's just, this game, I think Ryan and Alex are the same way. It's just really streaky. Caleb's the same way right now too. You kind of start running hot and then everything just kind of falls into place. So we'll see how it goes.
100%. I think that's like a great transition into that topic of like Caleb. 3rd finals appearance, 2nd win. And I agree. I think the games are super streaky. I used to follow LSV for a long time when I played Magic, and there were seasons where like he was hot garbage, never placed anything, and then next thing you know, he's top 8ing like 3 GPs in a row, right? So I think it's one of those things when you're just hot. Also, the meta just like speaks to you, and the deck speaks to you, and I think that's the most. I think for what it's worth, I'll be interested to see how well Caleb does if/when Axe Spider ever gets hit. But up until now, it's the best deck on many numbers, and he's done incredibly well with it. So I guess the question kind of lands: is Caleb the best player in the game at the moment?
Yes. It's kind of funny. I was saying in the car ride on the way home on Saturday night that there were 4 people playing in the Top Cut. Well, first of all, the Top Cut was stacked. That was a crazy Top Cut. But there were 4 people in the Top Cut that were playing for like the title of best player, right? Valentino, Alex, Caleb, and Matas. Like if any 4 of those would have won, this would be an entirely different discussion. So Caleb winning, he definitely earns that title. He is definitely the hottest / best player right now. He's kind of on fire. And then, I think that Alex, Valentino, Matas, I think those are probably the 4 best players right now.
Matas is missing a win, right? Like that's aside from that,
that's literally it. Yeah.
I think he's still by far the most consistent player in the game.
Yes. Yeah, he's finished 9th or better in every event that he's played in since Palm Springs, and that's all of them. So
yeah, he's had just a tremendous run with it, right? As you mentioned, like 9th being the worst that he's done in these events, and been able to do it across multiple formats. Yes, being a king of purple, all things considered, but just running it back time and time again. And I bug him every time, and I don't know how he does it. It's like, hey, how much did you sleep? I got about an hour and a half of sleep, and I had my cup of coffee in the morning. I'm good to go. I'm happy to be here. I'm like, dude, take care of yourself. Like, how are you holding it together? Damn. So that's its own feat, how he's able to pull it off time and time again.
Yeah, and imagine if we had if it was set up like the other games where deck submissions were like round 1, so everyone's on no sleep, but he's like a pro at it, whereas everyone's like. And basically being on that like Alex $800 nap time, which is something to note, by the way, if you guys are playing in Grand Opens or Premier events moving forward, at least in North America, submission times are now 8 p.m. the day before as opposed to midnight. But apparently if you're in the EU, you can resubmit up until round 1. So
yeah, it's by TO, I think so. Play TCG. I think what it looks like, they don't have any other, events listed at all for Battle Spirits for them because, I'm sure they will do one in the future, but as of now, the next event, of course, is the second Pro Tour, which is, of course, EU. And then the first Grand Open for Season 3 is run by Core TCG. So, that's all the info, we have. So I don't know what their deck submission time is, but, maybe it's later. I hope it's the morning of, but who knows?
Maybe it's earlier with our luck. We're just gonna keep.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like noon of Friday. It's like, give me your list. So yeah, okay.
Yeah. Ryan Miles actually made an amazing point on that. In that, so much of probably the best testing and best ideas you're gonna get are literally the day before the event because that's when everyone lands. That's when you have a sync up with a bunch of players. Right. Yes, people are doing testing across TTS or whatever Discord, but you have such a center focal point of like top players all sitting down to come in there, all bashing heads into the ideas, that like it really does lend itself to those like midnight 1-2 a.m. pivots that sometimes just kind of make or break a tournament. I mean, I was on green tempo before Tulsa, and the switch to Axe just made the most sense because like I was, slamming myself against your deck and I was slamming myself against Koz's deck, and I'm like, yeah, no, it's just Axe is just the solution I need for this tournament right now. So I'm a big proponent of it personally, especially coming from Magic, but
no, I mean that's a great point because like the players in this game, all of the top players, it's just kind of funny. We usually all find each other like the night before an event, whether it's in the lobby somewhere or like the hotel bar or wherever it is. It just happens that like there's like 20 players in the same area and you exchange ideas and talk about things. So, it kind of sucks that we miss out on that with an earlier deck submission, but we'll see how it is, moving forward. I'd like for them to consider changing it, but I do understand if there's staffing issues, sometimes you can't help it. So I won't be too hard on them.
Yeah, my understanding is they need to do like verify the deck list the day before to make sure they're all legal, to like not make it so strenuous during the day of, which like I can understand if you can only ever have X amount of staff per event, it's just kind of limited on what you can do the day of. So I don't know the logistics of it all. That's just kind of like my understanding of it. I'm partial to later submissions because I think it just kind of flows better with how the player experience rolls with these kinds of things. But at the end of the day, we'll just kind of see how it runs out.
I think everyone wants the later ones, so I don't think you're alone there.
Mm-hmm.
The last part of that too is just with everyone working full time, you don't usually have a lot of time, right? That's the other part to mention. Like Monday through Thursday, generally you're working, you have other real life obligations that the time that you really get to test, right, is going to be that Friday. So we're losing basically an entire week worth of what we could, bring to the focus play on Friday. Say, hey, at least we have a few hours. And now it's just like, nope, sorry, unless you throw away everything else you're doing earlier in the week, you're not going to get in that valuable testing. And it's just hard, especially for a game that you have to be 18 and older to compete in, right? A lot of people are working full time, all things considered. So just being a little bit more mindful of giving players the opportunity to play Friday night, I think is just huge for that reason as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Friday's a travel date for a lot of people. Like, realistically, here's the thing. This being at 8 p.m. on Friday actually meant that you had to submit your deck the day before, right, Koz? Because you actually had to travel over the day of, and by the time you get to the hotel, you weren't actually not making the deck submission time. So.
Yeah, I had to, actually, one of my meetings got canceled, so I got lucky the day of. And so that's how I swapped to green, funny enough, because I submitted Axe Spider the night before, woke up, had a meeting get canceled, and I'm like, I was just so miserable. I did not want to play Expire. I said, screw it, let's play green, resubmitted it, and then got in the car. And by the time I got to my hotel, it was like 9 o'clock or whatever. So I wouldn't have been able to change it again. And I wouldn't have been able to update my deck list unless my meeting got canceled for work. So yeah, it was just not a great experience, but it worked out for me in the end. So small victories.
So with that said, to roll out the red carpet for those who did make out top cut, first place was Caleb Albert with his Axe Spider deck. Second, Frisco Foz. So for those of you guys who've been around Bandai games forever, Frisco is a huge name in like Dragon Ball and all that, and was a very top performing player there. So has shifted over to playing some Battle Spirits. Was at Grand Opens in Season 1, and now finally breaking into Top Cut, finishing in second place. So huge congrats over to him there. In the top 4, you got Blandon and Tatta with their Terrasaur decks. And then in top 8, you got Ryan Miles, Kai Kamiya on Axe Spider. Both of them, Ryan Valentino on Terrasaur, and then Ryan Matas on this like Curse Tempo mid-range deck. So, which makes the top cut like half the field Axe Spider. Then you got 3 Terrasaur and then 1 purple. So, I mean, the meta is the meta at this point. I don't think there's much conversation there. I think there's like a back and forth between, the conversation we've had forever. You're the depths deck or you're the best you're like red / whatever deck. And that being Terrasaur now just with like cheaper unblockables. Already, we were seeing Terrasaurs that played like Derm or whatever. And this is just like a Derm that makes more sense for the deck that has like not as many cores and access to like board presence as any other deck. So I think in general there's no real surprises there. I don't think much of that changes, but we'll have to keep an eye because now in the next 3 weeks there's a Grand Open every single weekend. So like some of them are getting streamed, some aren't. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see and keep an eye open to there. Who knows, man? Maybe the ingenuity of the European or Latin American players or the Oceanic players will kind of dawn on us something new for this meta, but we'll just have to keep our eyes open for that. Really being kind of the last events up until the Netherlands Pro Tour at the end of October. So huge gap there. Probably something I'm going to try to do is kind of run like some Discord tournaments or whatever to kind of get prepped. And if we ever do get like a ban list or something, I think I'm going to fire one off just to get like some people kind of get in the mood of like what it feels like playing in that kind of a world before just jumping right into, getting on to flights and going to the Netherlands and stuff like that. But of course, with the mention of Pro Tours, they also kind of essentially told us what's happening with Worlds. Bandai Fest is happening at the LA Convention Center in January. So it turns out that we're not only just going to have Worlds, but from the looks of it, we're having Nats for every Bandai game there. So it's supposed to be like this whole big thing. If this were like a Bandai card game conversation, I would probably have some opinions about how I feel getting my invites taken away for 2-round buys. But like that's a whole different topic for players who play completely different card games. So I'm not going to jump into that. But there are two things. One, we know the World's location. We officially know. We kind of had like the leaks based on what the LA Convention Center had posted a few weeks earlier, but we now know for sure that it's part of the Bandai Fest. And very interestingly enough, if you win Worlds, you actually get an invite to the Japanese Bandai Fest in March for an exhibition event. So that could be super cool. So you're not only playing for the big bucks and the title of Worlds, but maybe they're going to have you fight off some Japanese players in some kind of like BS unified format kind of thing. I don't know. Could be really interesting. But Koz, I know that you actually kept an eye on what they did with Bandai Fests in Japan, because they did do them once there. And for a long time, we were like, hey, we're just not in a world where we can get all the Bandai IPs in the same room because of like licensing and them not being happy that like One Piece shares a room with Dragon Ball and Digimon and all that. Now it's becoming a thing. Kind of like, what should people be expecting going into a Bandai Fest?
Yeah, so this is something that's really excited me, dating back to right in August when we first learned about Battle Spirit Saga. Over the winter break is when they had their Bandai Fest in Japan. It is just a grand celebration of all the games coming together, and they usually have, and this is where it'll be interesting to see what they do, a bunch of like exclusive swag to the event. So it's not just like, come hang out, have a good time, play in your major tournaments for your respective games. There's also like a reward for going there, right? Like Pokemon does this as well for their worlds or for their special events. You see the deck boxes all the time. You see the sleeves and all that stuff. So I'm really hoping, again, fingers crossed, that for outside of Japan, I'm sure they're still going to have like the biggest celebration of all these be in Japan. And yes, I realize that no Europe, no LATAM, right? That's not a proper world tour. It's just Asia plus LA. Yeah, that leaves a little bit to be desired, to say the least. But I'm really hoping that we will get to see some of these special announcements, some of the special cards, right? There was these special promos for Union Arena because that just launched for them previously, where they had like, show up and you get like these awesome, what are they called? The point cards that you could get that were only available at those events. For Battle Spirits, I know they got special sleeves and they had promo packs you could get that were like special alt art. So there is a opportunity here to be more than just these nationals and world tournaments that we can expect, but really just going to be a grand open area. It could be like the Digimon Fest they had where they had like special artworks displayed. So I know it's asking a lot, but I'm really hoping they do this right outside of Japan, where we do still feel like it is a proper Bandai Fest and not just the tournaments coming together. But either way, it's going to be a great time. I have a bunch of friends that play other Bandai games. I'm sure everyone that's listening, or even John and Espira, have other friends who are playing Bandai games. So it's just going to be nice to have this end of year celebration of everybody coming together in one area, because so many of our events have been split out between Dragon Ball or One Piece or Digimon or Battle Spirits, kind of just all over. So I think above all, I'm just looking forward to exclusive swag and a great time seeing everybody across the games for the Bandai family.
Yeah, I'm personally just excited for like the fanfare of it, right? I hope they do it right. I hope like the feature match areas, like, like a mini stage with a table and chairs like other games do. And, it's kind of a really good chance for them to celebrate the players, within the event. Plus, of course, all the other things you said, I'm sure that there'll be other things to do and see. So I'm hopeful that it's more than just, hey, show up and play in this tournament, then kind of move on. So I think with the feedback that we've given them as a community through surveys and through, other means, I'm sure that they'll finally take this to heart and, do it right.
Yeah, I think one of the conversations we actually had often during the Pro Tour and post Pro Tour was that lack of fanfare, right? Like it really felt like you would show up, you're playing the tournament. It almost like a job, to be honest. We're here, we know what we got to do. We're just going to do the thing, play the thing, and like there was a general lack of excitement, I guess, right? So I guess To that front, it's like, how could Bandai Fest improve on that? I guess it's things like celebrating the players, right? Making something out of the feature match than just like, hey, we're going to shove two guys in a corner and have them play a game while the audience on Twitch is.
I mean, speaking of fanfare, I think that this past Grand Open in Pittsburgh, I think that this was the first event that there was finally a group top 8 photo. I don't think there was one at any other event. And, I know that D kind of took over the social media and, that kind of side of things. I think someone should probably share that to like the Battle Spirits group as well, just to kind of get it more, more attention. Cause I think she posted everything to the Play TCG Facebook page. So, we kind of need to get some cross posts there, but I mean, that's a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, we also got our first player card as well. Huge shout out to Espira for putting that together. And, we passed on that information to Bandai, I guess is the way that I'll frame it. Be like, hey, this is a good idea. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And it looks like we did actually get it on Twitter. Obviously, it was Play TCG, and then Battle Spirits Saga, the official Twitter account, retweeted it. But it is out there. We have our first player card with Kayla, which is really great to see. So hopefully more of that in the future. Then, of course, with like the top 8 photo, right? We should also have the top cut photo and then also the champion, right? Have both of those elements for each one of these events. But the other thing I want to go back to, because I just remembered it was updated, is on the Bandai Card Games Fest 23-24, because that's the official name of it, Bandai Fest World Tour. There is also a little section for products that says coming soon. So fingers crossed that does mean exclusive products like they had for Bandai Fest in Japan, but we will have to wait and see to figure out what that actually looks like in terms of, is it sleeves? Is it deck boxes? Is it play mats? Right? It's, maybe it's just me, but I am a big fan of like everyone come together. Let's celebrate all the card games under the family tree for Bandai. I would love to see like a unified mat that represents all the games on it as kind of like their focal point for like the, hey, everyone who came to Worlds, this is the mat. Here's all the card games. We are all one Bandai family on here, right? I think that'd be super cool. That's like my personal wish for like at least one mat design that way. Then of course have special swag for each game as well. But I'm really hoping they do something proper like Bandai Card Games World Tour 2023, 2024, right? Whatever you want to put as for the date for it. So more to come on that. Hopefully soon-ish, because it's kind of right around the corner, I guess. Not too far away.
Yeah, just about around the time where you should be getting flights and stuff like that. So hopefully for us, we're probably going to be going anyways because we're qualified for Worlds. Cosmic, you're on your way up with Netherlands, so I'm sure that's going to happen there. I will say, here's the thing. I'm a player who for like a long time, like, I'm so sick and tired of getting play mats, right? And because you participate in so many events, they all give you participation mats, and then you're just stuck with like a pile of like 100 mats in your house that you don't know what to do with. But since Bandai kind of got rid of participation mats about a year and a half ago, it almost makes me realize like how much I kind of missed getting a mat. Like the Digimon, like I loved my Nats Digimon mat, right? And it's just like, it kind of, John kind of dawned on me, like, I'm stunned we never got a Pro Tour mat. Right? Like just as a participation, like it's the kind of thing that you don't realize you kind of miss getting until it's actually like taken away. So I am super on board that like hopefully we do, at least if not for Bandai Fest, as Worlds attendees or something like that, get a mat that we get to take home, because like there's just something more, and I don't know what it is, if it's just like maybe because it's like pseudo furniture, or it's always on the board when you play with it, so it's more of like a part of your identity and stuff. But it's just like when you get cards, I love getting cards, I love the prize cards, I love what they're doing with that, but it's just so much easier to just like, oh hey, sell this, sell that. When it comes to a mat, it just feels like there's a greater barrier to entry to emotionally detaching yourself from it, because it's almost like serves more as a trophy than like say like alt art cards do.
Yeah, my thing with mats is that I don't like mats just for the sake of getting a mat. Like I don't want a mat from locals. I don't want a participation mat for a Grand Open. Like I don't care about those mats. Those mats aren't worth anything to me because everyone in the room has one. So the mats that I want are like Pro Tour Top 16 or like, Grand Open winner, things like that. So to not get a Pro Tour mat, I feel like that was like a pretty big missed opportunity for them.
Yeah. So hopefully with Worlds, there's a shift there. I mean, like from the idea, right? Because it's not just Bandai Fest, is the fact that they've kind of created this whole like Bandai card game umbrella. They're like finally recognizing that their card game division is big enough to even have like a brand, and like they're pushing it, and this allows them to do Bandai Fest across the world and whatever. So depending on how hard they want to push that, right, it really serves them to double down and really like up the player experience when it comes to playing like anything Bandai related in the card game. So maybe that that desire to kind of make it like more want you associate Bandai Fest with excitement and stuff like that leads to it. Maybe a more exciting thing. So we'll see. Announcements to be coming. Naturally, we'll probably be lining up our booked flights there anyways. But for a lot of these games, they now have open nats, open finals for North America, which means a lot of players will have a decision to make on whether they want to go or not. And fanfare, product, all of that are really parts that kind of serve in that front. And then did want to return on the social media front. Again, did love what Play did for this event. I think D did a great job in terms of like sharing like the top 8 photos, making the players in the final take a handshake and making that photo, which like up the it. And for those who didn't know, I was working the broadcast actually for the stream, and it actually did bump up viewership. Right, like it turns out marketing your events actually makes a difference. So the player card is sick, and now it's just about consistency. I think, right? Like, hey, we've got one TO who does this, but naturally there's a big disparity on like it's always a question on whether a international Grand Open is going to get streamed, right? Or like we don't even know if the Pro Tour is going to get streamed, right? Like, or who's going to do that, or what's that going to look like? So I think now it's just consistency across the board, right? You've got like North America is kind of setting the standard, and hopefully that standard is respected across all TOs, and that would be great. That would probably be like once we know that like Bandai's kind of like tightened its belt is kind of when I can go to any event anywhere in the world, and it's a Bandai Battle Spirits event, and it's not like the TO kind of makes no relevance in who that is. I think that is kind of like the dream scenario as we slowly start towards kind of like tightening up what we want Battle Spirits to be. All right, well, that's the general topics for today. I think a big hot topic in the community right now is naturally the whole depths thing, but I think that might be a better conversation for next week, kind of like as we serve into potentially what blue reveals are looking like, or probably set 2 reveals. Blue will probably be on the later half because they just kind of go by set number unless they're changing it this time around. So we'll probably push that.
Deck, right? We'll get the starter deck first, so we will get blue cards first.
The War Gods starter deck, which is most likely going to be mill, so we'll see. But again, as we think back to the green starter deck and some of the other things, it'll be like 1 or 2 cards that we care about, and then that's probably not going to give us enough information to see how much mill we're going to get, because we're going from 40 card decks to up to 60 card decks, so it's going to be interesting to see. They can't just 1-to-1 the effects because that's already nerfing it. And then there's also, of course, the chance that they overtune it and make it too many mill cards because they're accounting for 50 to 60 card decks. So it's going to be interesting to see how the effects shift. And then obviously there's a lot more to blue to look forward to, but those won't come until the end of, or the last spirits to be revealed in set 3. So we're going to be waiting a while to see blue again after the starter deck.
Yeah, in theory, I know that we said this last week too, but in theory, next week we'll have, at least a handful of cards to talk about from set 3, as well as, of course, more Grand Open results. I think that the Grand Open this weekend in Glasgow's probably, from what I hear from the Europeans, plus there's a handful of U.S. players going over, I think it'll be one of the biggest ones of the season. So, it'll be fun to see what decks come out of there, and so we can talk about that, and of course the blue cards that we should theoretically see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it turns out when the Pro Tour is in your backyard, you're going to have more people attend your events. But
yeah, right.
Another topic for another time.
Yeah, so I think with more results, I think that leads to a better conversation. Because now it's not even just about depths, but it's the notion of like, hey, if you want to fix the format, you just get rid of depths. And then if it's like, if you want the format to be fresh and new, you like shotgun like 5 or 6 cards. So yeah, I think
the problem now is that Europeans love Terries, right? I mean, every event you'll see tons of people play Terries. So what might happen, with Alex going as well, I know what he's playing, and a handful of other people probably playing it too. You might get a field where it's like 20% Terries. So, maybe 3 or 4 sneak into the top 8, and it's like a repeat of Pittsburgh. And then I don't want that to happen, and then Bandai look at it and be like, oh, this is pretty diverse, right? But, what I don't know if they understand. I know that the average player probably doesn't understand that we have to play cards like Joker because the meta is so oppressive. Like we don't want to play Joker in Terrasaur. It's like that card shouldn't be in a Terrasaur deck, and I don't think Bandai intends for it to be in a Terrasaur deck, but it just has to be because how format warping Axe Biter is, and depths, and so on and so forth. So I just hope that when they analyze this data, they don't just look at it in a vacuum and be like, okay, well, there was 7 Terrasaur decks out of the top 16 or whatever. So, we'll see come October what they, want to really do, but I just hope they look at it as a collective rather than just, in a vacuum.
Yeah, this is where the meta's evolved to, and this is kind of like how players are answering it, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So with that said, we'll wait and see, and that'll probably lead, it'll create for a more informed discussion, because I think there is naturally the North American bubble, and we aren't the only players. So just kind of seeing how the international scene kind of deals with the plate we've presented will be very interesting to see how they kind of move forward from there. With that said, before we jump into kind of like what's upcoming and kind of what our hopes and dreams for Blue is, we do have Guess That Flavor Text. So once again, a reminder for our viewers, I will present to our apostles a flavor text, and then they will get 2 hints, of which every time they take a hint, it will lower the points they get by 1, which means they have a total of 3 points to have if they don't need the hints, and will lose 1 for every hint, of which I give them the total cost of the card, and then it's typing. And since this is kind of like, we had our trial week last week, this is our full week this week, so we will actually start taking score. So we will see. I did know that John said he's been looking up some flavor text, but I think I got you guys squat this time. So we'll go ahead and jump right into that. So, are you gentlemen ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So the flavor text for you here is: in an effort to spare the ice princesses, the machine beasts turn themselves into living shields, taking every blow.
So I'll be honest, I didn't know this one until somebody made an oopsies as we were preparing the stream. So I don't know.
No, I was so hoping you weren't paying attention.
By myself, but I'll let you try to take this one if you didn't see it.
All right, Don.
Okay, so I didn't see it. I wasn't paying attention when you were setting up the stream. But I can tell you now that this is definitely a white card. Let's see. So white machine beast. What would be a white machine beast that would have flavor text? All right, give me the first hint. What's the cost?
Cosmic, I actually don't have a second monitor, so do you mind actually pulling up the card and telling me what its cost is?
Sure. I got it. But I believe it is a 6 cost if I remember correctly. But let me give you the exact. Oh, just kidding. It is a 4 cost.
4 cost. 4 cost. This has to be set 2 since that's like more Ice Princess stuff. Probably a vanilla. What's the 4 cost white? 4 cost white, machine beast, vanilla, and set 2.
Yeah, you do get the benefit that you don't need to lose a point on your second hint, because I think we can land on what archetype the card is.
I know what card it is. So the 4 cost vanilla white card in set 2, that's a machine beast, would be the polar bear. I don't know his name though. Ursa something or other.
Sure, so is that your final answer?
Yes. It has to be that. I don't know what else it could be.
It's not a vanilla.
Yeah, it's not. You're right. You know what? I'll give it to you. You are just right.
I thought it was a vanilla. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, this has to be a vanilla.
God damn. Why'd they make them so bad?
Yeah. I mean, the white cards like this, I just assume are always vanilla. But I guess he does technically have game text.
So Ursus Polaris is a 4 cost 2 white reduction machine beast.
And is that a walrus? Or is that a...
No, I think you're bear. It's a bear. Yeah, I think it's a bear. Yeah,
well,
bear, right?
Yeah, because
so it's a polar bear. Yeah,
whatever the first part of the name it means bear.
Yeah. So it's a 2K level 1, 4K level 3. On level 2, when the spirit blocks, your spirits with a soul core on them gain 3K BP during this turn. Yeah. So unfortunately, a large majority of set 2 cards are like that. Which kind of lends, unfortunately, the set to be a little underwhelming compared to what we were getting from set 1. But yeah, that was there's a lot of fun nuggets in there, and I do think once we get through so many of these, the flavor texts, that that will maybe be able to piece together the entire story of what's the land of battle spirits called again? I always forget. But
Now I'm gonna forget. I should know that.
Look,
but you can find out in the lore book dropping at your LGS September 29th.
2 weeks.
39, 29 pages of lore to look forward to.
Yeah, I actually think I'm semi excited for the lore set because Tokiwa is like nuts. But I've actually been looking at K more often, and I'm like, well, if Impaler is good, right, and we're in the late game scenario where I'm able to have Impaler on board and put 3 cores on him and for some reason not have to use those cores for something defensively, then maybe there's a world in which like I can afford 7 cores to play a K, maybe, and like she draws me 2 or 3 cards as opposed to Impaler's just 1 from my drop, right? Like instead of just getting a Derm Dino, I can get like a Derm and I don't know, like an Aglavale or whatever, or like an Elemental or something. So I think there's some interesting worlds where, as dismissive as I am of the general archetype in general, I think there's probably still some value. I still stand at like the cards like the white guy that gives like all your generals armor. Like that's obviously washed because he's only playable if the archetype is playable, and I don't think that really is. But I think there's a world in which you can kind of mess with that card and it does something.
So can we go back for a second? I feel like I didn't get the props that I deserve for getting this guess the flavor text with 1 hint.
No, that was a bit. Well, 1 hint.
1 hint plus the flavor text, but yeah.
But no, that's amazing. I'll tell you right now, I did not even know the card existed. So I think that
here on my whiteboard next week. I'm just going to tally up the scoreboard and.
All right, I'm gonna freshen up next week.
Yeah.
I think it's valid to give Koz a point because he didn't even get to be able to say it at all. But your 2 points were very much warranted. So I think you are definitely ahead on that race.
Right. Carry on with your lore set.
I just think it's gonna have. I just think it'll be interesting. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. So speaking of the lore set, so the decks that I have built for testing, basically the 2 main ones anyway, are focused around the red card you were just talking about, Key or K or whatever her name is, and Tokiwa. So I think those are the 2 cards that are the most obvious. Like, hey, I should build around this. But I wouldn't be surprised if like the purple guy sees some play somewhere, or like the yellow Fabled Beast might see some play, not for its effect per se, but just because it's a 2-cost Fabled Beast. So we'll see where it goes, but I would be shocked. And I know that the Discord is kind of already on this, but Volcanic Canyon with Tokiwa is going to be a menace to deal with. And if Depths goes, I think a lot of those type decks can just slot in 4 Canyons, 1 Tokiwa in place of the 4 Depths. So, we'll kind of see where that goes.
I'm just gonna be over here living my green dream still. Apparently, I've gone from yellow stand to now green stand. So I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm probably playing some Tokiwa green deck for the Pro Tour, but obviously we gotta wait till we get product in hand. Or I guess now that we can kind of not worry about the current meta and kind of take some respectful speculation on what the ban list will look like and just say no depths and who knows what else. But I'm just gonna start jamming some green deck into various decks and see where it lands. But I'm so confident that Tokiwa is just absolutely cracked that that's where I want to be. But we'll see how the format shakes up.
Yeah, I think most of the players that I've talked to are pretty much already on that. We're already testing with no depths. Like we just, already assume it's not going to be there. So anything else they do, we'll kind of adapt to. But you can pretty safely, I think, start testing now with no depths.
Yeah, and I think it's just the fact that like between Tokiwa being a 5-drop, so it works with Beltagore, so you can play Beltagore in your deck if you really want to. Like there's enough. It feels like we're almost at a point where there's enough pitches that aren't real pitches, right? Like you pitch a Beltagore, you're gonna get that card back, right? You pitch Tokiwa, you're gonna get that card back. So it feels like Canyon is like more and more shaping up to be a plus card, not just like a card quality card, which just definitely ups the stonks. Yeah, which definitely ups its stonks on like how good it is. So
yeah.
With that said, upcoming reveals for set 3 at some point. Right, so for those who don't know, set blue has kind of like 2 things that go for it. It's a mill archetype, and it's also like a tax archetype, right? Like tax multi-attackers apparently are like a thing. Oh, Nexus, of course. So like the big
Yep.
thing is mill, Nexus, and then in between that you have like taxes, stuff like that. So I guess starting off with Cosmic, since he's kind of more like oriented towards what JPBS is, and then we'll shift over to John there. I'm kind of like, what are your hopes and dreams for like Blue coming into set 3?
Yeah, so I know Mill is going to be the one that people either love it or hate it. So I'm just kind of like, look, they have to rebalance it for Saga. I'm not even considering that really. For me, the biggest one is going to be Assault, because what Blue does with their Nexus and with their various cards is that they'll also have cost-based destruction. So it'll be something like, when this spirit attacks, destroy a 3 cost. And then you combine that with things like Assault, and now suddenly, and for a refresher for those at home, something that says Assault 1 would basically mean when that spirit attacks, you can exhaust a Nexus, restand it, and it can attack again. We will see the Hydras, or whatever they get, Fusion Beast, they'll be renamed maybe, in our set. They'll be like Assault 6, right? Just to give you an idea, where then it's like, oh, they're attacking 6 times in a turn, and like that's your key spirit, your new game ender. So for me, I'm really curious to see what type of cost-based removal that we end up getting, and honestly, where the Nexus land. I mean, there are some effects that are basically like, your opponent cannot play spells. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, because there's other conditions on that, but just more ways to interact with the game to force your opponent to play differently or have to pay extra cores for stuff. So for me, it's really the combination of where Assault ends up and the cost-based removal, and then also the death and taxes style of gameplay for anyone that plays Magic, and seeing what Bandai does with it for Saga.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be notable kind of seeing what changes they make. Because Mill is one of those things where it's like, it's broken or it sucks, right? Like it's literally kind of not in between.
I was going to say that. Like I don't think I've ever played a game in my entire life where there was a mill strategy and it wasn't either complete dog water or broken to the point where you had to ban cards. Like it just doesn't exist. And so I'm really curious how Battle Spirit Saga will end up doing it. I don't personally know anything about Blue and Battle Spirits. I don't know what it does. I don't know what the cards do. Every time someone shares a card in Discord, it's Japanese and no one talks about it. So I have no idea what any of these cards are.
Guilty.
Yeah, but so the art's cool. I don't know if we'll get any of that art, but it's definitely like a step up from what we have now. But like the taxation style of play, I'm a huge fan of. I would like to see effects that tax burst cards. I don't know if we'll get that from Blue, but that's something that I'd like to see. I think one of the main things the game's missing right now is ways to punish burst cards. So, maybe is that something Blue does? Because
there'll be
nice.
ways to tax it. White will eventually get ways to like bounce the burst to the bottom of the deck. Like other colors generally do get a way to interact with them on some level. And then of course there's all the way going to current Japanese battle spirits will like where burst spirits counter other burst spirits, but they're super narrow in their specific activation windows. So that is just a key part we're missing in general. And it's going to be interesting to see when we get it. Maybe they're waiting for all the colors, and then like set 4 would be the first time where we see kind of that next level of interaction happen. But
yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for burst spirits yet, but I'm definitely
not that far, but like let's interact with the burst zone in some way.
Right. So once we see the starter deck, I think we might get a better picture of what Blue wants to do in Battle Spirit Saga. For Green, while the starter deck wasn't very good as a whole, we at least saw all the different mechanics for Green. We saw Swift, we saw all the like exhaust stuff. So with like needle shot. So hopefully Blue's kind of the same way. We'll see what their overall focus is and have a better idea of what to expect.
I'm also a big fan of Death and Taxes. I love Mill. I'm gonna just say it outright. Mill might be bad. I'm playing it. I guarantee you, I'm playing it, and we'll see how it goes from there. But I love my uninteractive, unfair strategies, and it really feels like Blue is kind of like one of those colors.
Yeah, I'm a fan of those strategies too. Like I don't mind playing Mill. Like when Dragon Ball, I played a few tournaments with Janemba, and like it was cool. It was fine. But I mean, I felt like it was overtuned. But anyway, I don't mind those strategies. Like I don't mind losing to them. I don't mind playing them. Like it's fine. I just want to play the game. Like I don't want it to be so broken that it's like it doesn't matter what I do, I'm getting milled out turn 3. So
it's a weird balance.
I think that's an important caveat to add where Battle Spirits does it a little bit differently is your spirits have to attack and have to survive combat most of the time to get their effect. So like there's always going to be that focus where, yes, you know a big scary mill guy is coming at you, but if you have a battle trick, you're probably going to get rid of them. And then your opponent's going to have to spend another turn trying to set up a combo or try to set up an enabler so that they can mill again. So there's a lot more forced interaction that happens out of blue mill, which is why it's my favorite, coming from Magic, coming from other games that I've done mill, where it's usually just like sit behind something stupid and use your life for, you know, that resource style, but where in Battle Spirits you do have to be actively aggressive with it. So of course there's always a side of like, you know, giving your opponent cores, opening yourself up to dream bombs or various removal. It's not like there's just a spell, there's no glimpse the unthinkable to make the Magic equivalent where it's just like, oh sorry, opponent mill 10 because this Magic card. It's always going to be with spirit effects and attacking, or at least what we can expect to see in set 3.
I think the comparison I can draw, at one point there was this cell deck in DB that was like cell hand destruction, and it was like extremely toxic.
Deck,
yeah. So it actually evolved to be a surge deck at that later in the game with like a yellow green. And the problem with that deck was the fact that it could rip your entire hand over the course of like 3 or 4 turns without having to interact with you. And eventually got errated and basically just Orioles just straight up banned. I can't remember, but but it's the notion of not having to interact with your opponent to be able to do the unfair thing. I love unfair archetypes because like I'm just a stupid. I don't like my opponents to have fun type of player. But I do. Hello, Kitty. But I do have an appreciation for interaction, right? And I think the fact that you have some strategies that are unfair and uninteractive, tough. So if it's like really the world where blue has to force your opponent into certain things to then be able to do the mill thing, I think at that point you kind of find a balance. Does that mean it sucks? Maybe. That usually tends to be the thing with mill, where again, if it's not broken, it's not really playable. But we'll have to see where it lands, especially since we have a bigger deck size like you. But then, of course, blue's not actually the only thing. There are 5 other colors in the game now. We'll have the full color pie. And I think one of the things that we saw in set 2 was how lackluster every main color got, right? Like, what do we see play from set 2? The Worker Ant, Thorn Prison, Aegis, and like some number of Infinity Shield, right? I think... do you guys having like hopes and dreams in regards to what other colors that are currently in the game will get with set 3?
I don't know. I mean, I just want a set that has slightly higher power level, I guess. Like I don't want 20 vanillas. So just give me a set without 20 vanillas. That's all I care about. So, you know, I think that will just by itself just inherently be better, you know, like when you have a set with that many vanillas, I feel like you're not going to see, you know, the set's 128 cards and 20 plus of them are vanillas. So, you know, the X rares this set were like a little lacking, you know, compared to set 1. So, you know, I think if we just get like a slight step up there, you know, I'm not asking for a giant power creep. I just want like slightly more playable X rares, for example.
I'm going to ask for power creep, but only for blue because I'm horribly biased.
Well, blue has to be crazy, right? I mean, yeah. So we have, if I recall from the product sheet, we have like twice as many blue X rares than every other color. We have, you know, they have to just introduce more blue cards in general, right? So,
yep. We'll get 4 blue X rares in the set, plus the starter deck, bringing a grand total of 5 X rares for set 3.
Yeah. So, you know, my hope is that most of them are playable. I mean, they kind of have to be. You know, I just want every color to have like a new archetype, basically. I don't think set 2 really introduced new archetypes. I think it just kind of maybe enhanced other archetypes, you know, if that makes sense. I want set 3 to, you know, like for red, right? There's no new decks for red in set 2, like literal 0. Like Dragonoid King is cool, like all the Dragonoid stuff is cool, but there's no coherent deck there. You know, even if all those cards were broken, there's no coherent deck there. So I just want the option to be like, okay, I'm playing red. I don't want to be limited to Nova or Terry's. So
I don't want to show my bias here again, but there's a comment to be made about Dragonoids where like there is a archetype there and it just sucks, unfortunately, where like Birdfolk has 3 cards, or I guess 4, right? And like that is clearly meant to be an archetype and just isn't in the set for whatever
they
reason.
even have their own Nexus. And like,
Yeah,
you can't do
Dragonoid's
anything
got a
with it.
spell, Dragonoid's got an aura, Dragonoid's got an X-Rare, and like they got it all, man, by comparison. But I think that also goes back to like that's what we want to see, right? We want to see the Dragonoid level of archetypes being built into the set, but then also not suck. So like one of the things that I want to see is like don't introduce another family into the game that has 1.5 playable cards with Birdfolk, because the Birdfolk with Raphael's make stuff level 1 effect and a Harpy Nest to make stuff level 1 effect and save against purple, which is a tough matchup for us. Those are really insane. So like if we get reasonable Birdfolk support in set 3, that should be a good deck. And then hopefully yellow can then have, here's your Fabled Beast, here's your Birdfolk, right? And expand more on that. So the one thing I will say too with green, it really is a support set. Like even with my deck that I made top 16 with, right? If you look at my top end, the green X-Rare suck, but that's because green just allows you to ramp, allows you to get all these extra cores, and then you just say, what is the best payoff in respects to the metaphor? The spoiler, it's going to be Elephant, because it's going to ramp you more and draw more cards, and then it's going to be Derm Dyna. The benefit or the hope that I have for blue is they are far more greedy. They care about their blue nexus. They care so much about blue symbols that they are going to be very, very like 90% of the deck has to be blue by nature. So I think just by that, compared to where green landed in set 2, that should land us to see a little bit more exploration in the blue decks. But again, if the X-Rares just kind of suck like they did in set 2 for green, then we're kind of unfortunately in the same spot. But I have at least a little bit more faith and hope that blue lands in a better spot overall.
Yeah, I think the 7-drop Toki was pretty slept on as far as green X-Rares go. But overall, I do agree. The green X-Rares are definitely lacking.
Yeah, it almost feels like they're not tied really tightly to like what their archetypes are meant to do, right? Like you have Blade Beast, which is kind of like doing this like, hey, if I'm a bigger dude, I get more cores, which kind of sets me up to do the really big thing, but we don't have the really big thing. That's Ant Queen, which like does its own thing and wants to do its own thing. So it's a little lack of coherence, and like even, and my problem is that definitely the archetype support. So like you said, set 2 supported older archetypes. So like red is the Confront stuff and the Star Dragon stuff. But for some reason, it's more tuned, like it's over fixed versus what we got in set 1. So the vanillas aren't as good, and we got a bunch of vanilla. The all the dino stuff that wants you to play like that Confront deck are all conditional now, as opposed to the ones that weren't conditional in set 1. So like if you want to build a Confront deck, you're still just using the set 1 ones. So there's this like world where it just doesn't match up, and then it's a tough balance, because you don't want to make those other colors so good that like the new color you're introducing can't keep up, right? But unfortunately, you just kind of create this world where you didn't make the new color strong enough, and the old stuff you purposely didn't make strong so that it doesn't overcompete with the fact that the new card pool needs to compete with like the other colors having triple the card pool, right? Double with green, and then it'll be triple with blue. So it's a tough balance. I just want it to feel different, and right now the game has definitely felt that for 8 months it's still basically like S1, like BSS01 meta plus, if you consider like
same
TP
was
plus
in February. Basically, the only addition is like X Spider.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the biggest thing. I'm hoping for those changes, but naturally, Pray Pentan, that's going to be next week, where we can finally start talking about some new cards and getting our minds off of the same, depths, ban this, ban that, Pro Tour discussions that we've been having. At least to add a little salt and, spices to our conversations that don't just kind of involve the same things over and over.
Yeah. Well, plus, like, in closing, what I wanted to say is that we know already that the world's format is set 3. So this set has to be good, or else Pro Tour 3 and Worlds are going to be like a snooze fest, and like they can't afford that. So, I hope that they considered that in their design, but we'll see.
Or hear me out, Bandai, if you're watching this, make Worlds set 4 legal and just give everyone a master set who's qualified for Worlds.
That would be hot. That would be hot, dude.
All I'm asking.
That would be fun. I'm all about that for sure. I would like that for Pro Tour 2 even. I mean, I know it's kind of late for that now, but I would love to be like, all right, guys, the format kind of sucks. We know it. Here's a master set, a set 3, go nuts. But whatever.
Yeah, that would be sick. But we'll just have to remain and see. Hopefully, big news week, end of week, maybe early next week, and the next time we join for a session, have a little talk about. And actually, on that, I would like to say we will now be taking both confessionals and questions. So if you have any confessionals, something of the sort of like, dear Pentan, I played white aggro at locals today. You know, like, just if you just need to get it off your chest that you did something so egregious that you would like us to bless you and, say that with X amount of Hail Pentans, you can be blessed and, cured of your sins. Naturally, also questions. We'll be taking a mailbag. So if you guys have any questions that you would like myself, John, or Cosmic to answer, if you are not part of the Battle Spirit Saga unofficial Discord community, jump on in there. I will set up some kind of section that allows us to take questions, and eventually I think I'll set up the Twitter and social media as well so that you can ask questions over on Twitter. So with that said, join up the Discord, join up the community, and other channels will soon also join in regards to being able to ask your questions or have us talk about your confessionals. Additionally, we are on all audio platforms now. I think it's officially been done. So I think if you're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all that kind of jazz, you guys can actually pick up the podcast. And it goes live a little bit earlier than the video portion. I do aim to have these out on the Wednesday morning. But because of the way that uploads work, they actually end up at like midnight, 1 a.m.-ish on the Wednesday if you guys are night owls or happen to be internationals that are trying to dead. But that said, I'm Espira, joined by my apostles, Cosmic and John. This has been the Church of Pentan Podcast. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll catch you again next week. The cores are safe.
Thank you.